We do have people online waiting. I just want to thank you for coming, and I'm going to hand over to our moderator, Dr. Rosaline Sebolao, to facilitate the program. Can we give her a hand of applause? We just want to welcome you all from the library and the library management, and enjoy. Thanks.
Thank you, Mekho. Dumelang. Good morning. Goeiemorgen. Realocha. Herkulaas, what is wrong now? Tobela. That's my mother tongue. And I got so excited when Dr. Herkulaas said could speak Sepedi. That really reminded me home, and I saw a student here who spoke my language, and I'm like, you are my child. So my name is Rosaline Sebolao. I'm the teaching and learning manager in the Faculty of the Humanities, and I'm a friend of the library. Yes. So today I'll be moderating this session. I'm very excited, and I'm looking forward to this day. And it's called a mind-altering book talk. So I'm not going to say anything before our elder speaks. We have waiting for us our DVC research professor Vasuredi, who's going to just welcome us, and then I will then share with you a little bit before I give over to our panelists, and I'll also introduce them at the right time. Prof. Reddy, over to you. Can we give a round of applause, please?
Thanks, Dr. Sebolao. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Prof, I can hear you.
Oh, great. And it's good to see colleagues in the audience. Unfortunately, I'm on campus, but I'm in a back-to-back, so I would have loved to have been there physically to join you, but unfortunately I can't. This is really, for me, one of the important flagships of the university, and in particular, I think the library and information services. So I really want to say a few words of welcome to Mind Altering Books. It's an initiative that we started about a year ago, and I think it's gaining traction, and it's good to see the uptake with this call this event really important on our calendar. So I warmly welcome everybody, and I trust you all well. And the important thing about Mind Altering Books is that it is an event focusing on books that help to challenge our assumptions, to expand our horizons, and of course, very importantly, to deepen our understanding of self and society. Books are not just simply those that you see collecting dust on a bookshelf. They are really tools to not only inform, but I think also transform, because books are about provoking reflection. It's about unsettling the familiar, and very importantly, inspiring new ways of seeing. I recall the words of a very prominent author, Virginia Woolf, who once wrote that books are the mirrors of the soul. They reflect who we are, but also in some ways how or who we might become. And I think that's what's really important about an event like this. I think the program is really a testament to our university's commitment to cultivating a culture of critical inquiry, empathy, and of course, lifelong learning. What would our lives be without books? Ultimately, we are a university. A university is about ideas. It's not just simply about people, it's what we learn. So, really, really excited about that. I'm also excited about the lineup of speakers that we have today, all in their own distinctive ways, scholars of distinction. And I'm really curious to hear from their experiences what they will be sharing with us, their encounters with texts that have shaped their thinking and their practice. And I think that these reflections that the colleagues will provide will help, no doubt, to illuminate the profound ways in which books, in particular, can reframe our realities. And in a way, I'm also reminded by another prominent writer, an American one, James Baldwin, who said, "You can think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read." And what did he mean by that? By that, he meant in reading, we find resonance, we find recognition and renewal. And even as recent as a couple of years ago, the Booker Prize winner Ben Okri said, "Our stories can conquer fear, they can make the heart bigger." And I think today is about precisely that, about the dialogue that what colleagues would open up by sharing their engagement with books and how it will inspire us to read not only for information, but for much more, I think. I want to thank the Library and Information Services team for curating this important platform, and thank the library staff, in particular Jeanette, the director, for leading the initiative together with everybody present. Now, I've seen on the program that there's a wonderful array of speakers, mainly many who are coming from the humanities and the cognate fields. But I would really like to encourage that when we go to a next round, that we draw in scholars from other faculties, because books are not only unique to people who are working in the humanities. So hopefully next year we would have some hardcore scientists, medical professionals, lawyers also sharing their ideas about books that have altered their mind. So with those few words, Chairperson Dr. Sebolao, I want to thank you and warmly welcome you. And again, as I said earlier, I hope that today's event inspires us not to read only for information, but in many ways to also read for transformation. And by that I mean transforming our minds, and enjoy the event.
Thank you very much, Prof. Vasu. Yes, can we give him a better round of applause, please? Indeed, we are the product of words. If I could ask you, why are you here today? Why are you at the level that you are? You would tell me that somebody had faith in me, believed in me, and they told me. Am I wrong? We are products of words. And my first book that I always share with people is by Norman Vincent Peale. I don't know if any one of you have read. He has books that inspire the mind and the heart. And that this is what keeps me going. If somebody tells me that if I can, you can, then I also believe I can. And if somebody teaches me about the power of positive imaging, then I'm going to imagine things so that they can come into reality. That's why I'm here today. And I believe that's where you can also go today. So the words, why I'm saying the words, for those who read another book that I read, the Bible, it says in the beginning was the word. And in my book that I wrote on wisdom from the school of life, the very first W, I speak about the words, because we kill and we build with the words. So it's important today to understand that the words that we are going to listen from these colleagues can inspire us. It's up to you how you take them. So these words, we take them and put them in a book on a paper so that those who cannot hear us can actually read our words. So let's understand this as just words. That's why Prof. Vasu said we are having a conversation, we are having a dialogue. Now, this mind altering book talk, I really like. As Prof indicated, it was initiated by the library, and it's designed as a reflective and an inspirational platform where staff and students and colleagues can actually come and reflect. So we are here to reflect. You are really, as you listen to somebody here, the words might resonate with you, you know. So it's important to understand that we are going to engage with their journeys, but also thinking, reflecting on your journey. And the objective of this talk is to encourage staff to reflect and articulate how specific books, I've already shared just one or two, but you can also reflect on how a specific book influenced your values, your beliefs, your perspectives, and your personal development or personal growth, and to create opportunities to also have an open dialogue you are going to network with people here. When you leave here, you'll be able to say, I think I had something from that person. Can we just have 2 or 3 people? You don't have to fill the hall like we have done today, but also to promote a culture of reading. We have challenges at primary school, at high school, students that come to the university with who cannot read for comprehension. So we need to promote that culture of reading, and we are the responsible people to do that. And also to position the library not only as a custodian of knowledge, but also as a facilitator of personal enrichment. That is why I'm a friend of the library. I love what they do. Now, we envisage, you see, I say we, not they, we envisage that the impact will be to deepen personal and professional self awareness among staff through reflection on the reading journeys, but also among students because we work with students. And in future, they will be our staff members, most of them, as we develop them, to inspire the staff to embrace diverse perspectives and broaden their worldviews. We were just sharing with Dr. Combrink outside about different perspectives that we have as people from different cultures. So we need to encourage people to also embrace those, to reinforce the value of books and reading as transformative tools for both personal fulfillment and professional practice. But most importantly, to contribute to staff well-being by offering a space for creativity and storytelling, because we do not want you staff members to be sitting and depressed and not knowing what to do. You know what? Creativity just brings life. I saw a young man who I heard was depressed. He is literally healed through dancing. I don't know, young people, if you've seen him on TikTok. So you need to know that your creativity can actually heal you. That's actually what Norman Vincent Peale said. The power of positive imaging. You need to imagine yourself as healed. When you drink water, imagine that water cleansing whatever toxins in your body and leaving your body as healthy as it was before. So I am not a speaker. I just wanted to set the tone. We have my colleagues and Prof Vasu says it looks like the humanities want to take over. So I see Dr. Kumring, you'll help us to get some more people from outside. Thank you. So we have our colleagues there. I'm going to start from the other side just to introduce them. Yeah, you have their profiles. I'm not going to read their profiles. But Prof Neo Lekgotla Ramoupi is a sentence on its own. He is the professor in the history department in the Faculty of the Humanities. And last year, because I saw a little bit, last year Prof won an excellence award on the curriculum development because of how he decolonizes the curriculum. So maybe his books will be on that. I don't know. I've got some ways from all of them. So this is how I know him. And then Prof Hussein Solomon, when I met him in 2020 when I arrived here, he's been fighting the same thing. Rosaline, please call me Hussein. I'm like, you know what? My culture does not allow to disrespect your Prof Hussein. You will hear me. So Prof Hussein is from the faculty as well, but from the Center for Gender and Africa Studies. He was at that time the HOD for Political Studies and Governmental Transformation. And then I have Dr. Combrink. You know what? I admire him. While he's not a person of many ways, probably he speaks a lot, but he's more into technology. And I know that he has a place in the faculty because he works with our colleagues on the Interdisciplinary Center for Digital Futures. I know you, Kom. I know. And then my colleague that I've known for many years since I've been here, but we have never met, amazingly, it's Dr. Kudzayi Ngara. So Dr. Kudzayi is in the Department of English. So you'll understand, as a teaching and learning manager, I interact with everybody. That's why I know these people. I know everybody in the university. So I will know you all by the end of this day. So thank you so much. And I am not going to waste time because these people are busy people and they already have some of the things to attend to, some health related, some business related. We are running a business as a university. I'm going to give over to Professor Hussein Solomon from the Center for Gender and Africa Studies. Over to you, please.
very much. So when I was first asked to do this talk about a book which had a profound impact on me, I thought, like Dr. Sebolao, I could say the Bible, since it was the first book with no references, and I hate references. And that is possibly why I like to write my books with AI. Anyway, so so the book that I chose to speak about, and hopefully some of you all have read, is the Confessions of an Economic Hitman: How America Really Took Over the World by John Herkulaas. So I was trained as a political scientist, all that stuff about political parties, parliament functions, proportional representation, and so on. And I think after I read this book, it changed my mind about how politics really works. And despite its tremendous importance, in my view, and you can be the judge of it after I'm done, here's the interesting thing. There is no South African university, either in economics or politics, which has prescribed this book as a read. And you need to ask yourself why. So what it is about. So before going into the subject matter, brief context here is needed. In 1953, Mohammad Mossadegh is democratically elected by the Iranian people, and he's a nationalist. And he wants the benefits of Iran's oil to build to its people, as opposed to British and American corporations. So he nationalizes Iran's oil industry. Of course, neither Washington nor London was going to accept this. They declared him a communist. And the CIA, under the leadership of Colonel Roosevelt and Britain's MI6, began a coup against Mossadegh. The media was used, civil society was used, the economy was strangled, and the army was brought in. And eventually Mossadegh was thrown out, and the Shah of Iran was brought to power, who immediately stopped the nationalization of Iran's oil resources. This was called Operation Ajax, and it was very successful. The danger was that the CIA could be exposed. On the other hand, if a multinational corporation did it, it would be insulated from congressional oversight and public scrutiny, shielded by a body of legal initiatives, including trade, international trade, and in the worst case scenario, being caught, it would be put down as a case of corporate greed, not state policy. So this book tells the true life story of John Perkins. As a young man at college, he wanted two things: money and women. He was also gifted with lots of charisma. So he was recruited into the National Security Agency, the CIA's boss. Okay? But he was put to work in a corporation. He was an economic hitman. So what do they do? His job was to befriend and ensure weak people with big ambitions, with skeletons in their cupboard, get into the highest political office. People essentially one can bribe, money and sex is the currency. The purpose was to get the country into debt. Leftist leaders were especially given the extensive promises, free education, free transport, free electricity, free health. He did not get it. The populist leaders were more concerned about winning the support of the people and staying in power than the long-term implications for balance sheets. The debt given was designed to be unsustainable, so that countries could not possibly pay back. They will default. And when they do, then real assets will be taken away from the country. It did not matter if a so-called leftist or right-wing leader comes to office, because you control the political process by controlling all of it. You have something on all of it. Whatever the ideology being spouted, whatever the over-the-top debates, it did not really matter. It was just theater for the masses. So what happens when a hitman fails to corrupt a leader who does not want to get into debt, who does not want to sell off his countries? Well, this is when the jackals come and they assassinate the leader. Think here of Patrice Lumumba. And where jackal fails, a full military assault takes place. Think of both Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi, who wanted to replace the US dollar with a gold-backed global reserve currency. Perhaps more to the point about our context, academia. John Perkins would fund new theories, I kid you not, in economics, a journal, organized conferences, all supporting the idea that debt was good. Academics, of course, were too happy to go off to some exotic location on a fully funded trip, never questioning what the darker purpose may be. Why this journal was being funded? Why were discussions being replicated in the media? Were they being quoted, etc.? Statistics here would be the big lie. In the case of Indonesia, they assess the country's ability to take on debt based on preposterous future growth trajectories. So, how has my reading this book changed my approach to the study of politics? First, I do not vote and do not believe in democracy. I believe in a meritocratic, technocratic society. Second, when I approach the study of politics, I'm less concerned about the party's political statement or a government white paper, and more concerned about knowing everything I can about that politician. It does not matter to me when I see you toying for those 16 days of women's activism, when you treat your mother, your wife, or your daughter like crap. It does not matter to me about your revolutionary rhetoric, when you can screw some go-go over in a VBS scam. It does not matter to me about your being shocked about corruption, when you stuff US dollars in your couches, ostensibly for payment for cattle, which the buyer never took. As an academic too, I wonder why some ideas and theories get funded globally and others do not. Is that some accident? I do not believe so. Finally, the issue of sex has come to occupy my mind more and more since reading the book. This isn't 50 Shades of Grey. The honey trap is a tried and tested technique by intelligence officials for millennia. You can find it in the Bible, Samson, and Delilah. Of course, there are new twists in this age, because having an extramarital affair these days does not bat eyelids. The ultimate taboo, however, is having sex with minors. And this is where the whole Epstein saga is, with powerful people allegedly blackmailed to push certain policies and to vote in certain ways, since there are 4 terabytes of information floating just above their stupid heads. Let me give you 2 very concrete examples about sex and power. I once worked for a general who fired a decorated officer since he was having an affair. I stupidly asked the general, "Sir, why are you doing this?" His response stayed with me forever, and I'm quoting him. He said to me, "I have never known someone who can control his private parts, but who is disciplined in other areas of his life. If you cannot control your penis, you cannot control the people around you or your environment. A person who can cheat on his wife will cheat on his country." That was my general. Let me give you one final example. In 2023, Qin Gang was China's foreign minister. He was an outstanding foreign minister. And he was chosen to be the Chinese President Xi's successor. So he was de facto number 2. Then suddenly he was fired as foreign minister and from all of his other posts. Why? He was fired since he was having an affair with a TV presenter. Western commentators said that the Chinese Communist Party was being prudish, however. But for the Chinese Communist Party, this was weakness. And no weak leader can ever lead China. And why? Why? To understand this, you need to understand that until the Opium Wars in the 19th century, so around 1840, China was the world's number 1 economic power. It was the world's number 1 superpower, China. Now, Britain was unhappy with the trade imbalance between China and itself, okay, because people were buying, soap and tea and stuff, but the Chinese didn't really want anything but British produced. So they illegally smuggled tons of opium into China and got millions of people addicted to opium and extracted silver. When the Chinese realized it, they sent British ships for opium. The British Navy was too strong and defeated the Chinese, forced them to pay for the sunk opium, forced them to give up Hong Kong, and got them to get full access to other ports in China, and to buy more opium to drug it. The Chinese promised themselves they will never allow themselves to be humiliated in this way again. A strong state was needed, a strong society was needed, and a strong leader. No leader cannot control this powerful region with head up China. Weakness inside the Chinese Communist Party must be destroyed like any other cancer. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Prof Hussein. I understand why you have been in politics. And colleagues, I indicated that here it doesn't matter whether you differ with his views, we have different perspectives. But what I like is that we are seeing these realities. When you speak about sex and power, we are seeing them. They are impacting us in a negative way. So sometimes we need people who can speak like this. So the other thing that I liked, Prof Hussein, is that no weak leader can lead China. I think we need to come to that stage where we say we need strong leaders. Because for a person to be said to be successful, you need to be successful in different perspectives. You can't be successful, say that you're successful in leadership when your family is not in good shape. I am not going to say anything. I hope you are preparing your questions so that we can have a conversation. And I'm going to call upon to go to Dr. Kudzayi Ngara. What I didn't let you know is that he drove all the way from Kwakwa. He's actually based on the Kwakwa campus in the English department. Over to you, Doctor. Will you have a presentation?
I can
go
ahead with that.
Okay. All right. Can we give him a round of applause?
Usually, from campus. I didn't think I would be able to be here, but talking about visual activity and the living of supporters, so I guess decided to go big and feel I was hoping that I wouldn't have to, I would have speaking before Professor said. But when I saw the program, it was really extremely to express. But in a way, I'm also glad that I spoke after him. Some of the things that he speaks about, I'm ready to talk about, but from a slightly different perspective. when I got the email asking me when it's coming, I wasn't really sure. Because primarily I read the language David. Well, in books, yeah, right? That's my business to read books. But then it also got me thinking, why am I in literary and cultural studies, and what book has made the most impact on me for the person. So I chose a Zimbabwean text by a writer called Ramoupi. Some of you may be familiar with. The book is called The House of London. First published 1978. I think there's some English postmodern done it on this university. The first line in the book reads, "I got my thing and that was." Now, from casual reading, it's simply a story of somebody who decides that his time in the house is up. But I think there's a deeper philosophical question that we need to ask ourselves. When you encounter that first sentence in the book, then you have to exercise your mind and think about what it is to leave home. So I structured my talk around the idea that home can become unhome. And hopefully, as I proceed, that sense of home no longer being the nurturing, caring space that it's supposed to be will come through. Just briefly, as a biographical or historical context, up to 1980, Zimbabwe was called Rhodesia under the colonial rule of Ian Smith after the British kind of abdicated in 1965 when they allowed him to declare unilateral independence. So we have a case of a colonial power such that is very much similar to the conditions that were in South Africa with racial discrimination and the like. So Dambuza Marechera is born into this colonial society when in the 1975 he is at the University of Rhodesia then, and there were protests and he was expelled, and then he found his way to Oxford University to continue his degree. But unfortunately, he didn't complete his degree because he threw a brick at his professor, or one of his professors, and he was expelled. And then he ended up in London, where he now writes the book and publishes in 1979, 78. The book actually won the Guardian Fiction Prize for that year, 1978, and received critical acclaim, primarily because it marked a departure in terms of Zimbabwean literature from the kinds of pastoral stories that the early practitioners of Zimbabwean literature were doing. The stories of the country and, happy savages, natives. Now, he, perhaps because he's writing from outside the country, is able to adopt a different kind of narrative style that doesn't stick to the conventions that had been established by this Rhodesian Literature Bureau, which controlled publishing in Zimbabwe, then Rhodesia. So, at its core, The House of Hunger is about dislocation. The author dismantles the idea of home as being safe, stable, and nurturing. Instead, home becomes unhomely, a site of filth, violence, broken bodies, and fractured identities. In this presentation, I'll try and focus on how Marecha's narrative forms narrative form and his recurring motifs of hunger, rot, violence, sex, madness, and imagination create a vision of unhomeliness. In terms of narrative style, Marecha uses a technique known as stream of consciousness, which kind of provides a fragmented narrative which mirrors the instability of both the narrator's psyche and the colonial state. The narrative jumps, breaks, and refuses coherence, just as Rhodesia itself was fractured by systemic racism, war, and social collapse. The word hunger expectedly saturates the text, standing for bodily deprivation, but also emotional and political yearning. Hunger becomes a metaphor for an unquenchable lack or thirst. Alongside this hunger, Marisha layers imagery of rot, such as blood, semen, pit latrines. Home is not nourishing but grotesque, marked by filth and corruption. Marisha uses black humor to survive the unbearable. There is plenty of laughter, but most of the laughter is characterized as being bitter, as having teeth. It's not laughter that is humorous in the natural sense, but that laughter that kind of is used as a mask for a deeper pain. Violence is everywhere in the text. There are physical beatings from parents to child, husband, wife, brother to brother, stranger to stranger. Police, at one point, he's beaten up on the university campus. Well, the narrator is beaten up on the university campus by a group of white racist supremacist students because we are against the protests that the black students were doing. There's also a pervading sense of sex. Sex is practiced often in communal spaces. There's a husband who rapes his wife in public. Then also the narrator's mother is engaged in extramarital affairs when the truck driver husband is away, and the kids all witness this. So sex becomes less about intimacy, but about domination and humiliation. As a consequence of all these things that are going on around him, the narrator suffers a series of nervous breakdowns and has to visit the mental asylum quite a lot. These reasons signal both personal trauma and the colonial psychic fracture that is Rhodesia is undergoing. In these circumstances, the idea of the self comes under great scrutiny. It comes under pressure, and it produces fragmented identities. Because of the racial context of 1970s Rhodesia, there is always a sense in the background that race is at the core of the problems. Because if you look at the township that they're living, then when you cross the rail line to the affluent white suburb, there's that disjuncture between the living conditions of the black people in the township and the whites. Think of the Alexandra Sampson picture. That's I think that brings it to vivid imagination. As I said before, Marisha's text is a departure from the kind of established writing that had been the kind of writing that had been established. If when you read it, you find that there's a lot of intertextual references to the Bible, to Greek mythology, Russian formalists. I think his writing was an experiment in his mind, but it's also a kind of a natural part of him as somebody who does not want to fall or be boxed into a particular category of writing. He writes elsewhere that he's against war and those against war. He's against everything that blinds the individual's blind impulse. Which suggests to me that he's somebody who some people have described him as a rebel, but I kind of think that he's somebody who is able to express himself in the way that he sees fit. The body is inscribed with violence. There are examples of, there are constant references to stitches or broken bones or broken teeth. Even smell becomes political in Mauritius writings. There are descriptions of flies, farting, and filth, which make oppression tangible. I referenced the divide between the township and the suburb earlier. Mauritius in this way pushes us not to consider just the visual, but also the olfactory experience of colonial decay. Yet, amid the grotesque, Mauritius insists on imagination's power. The text resists closure, embracing flight, madness, and elsewhere as forms of freedom and liberation. If home is uninhabitable, then perhaps imagination itself becomes the only living space. To conclude, in the House of Manga, home is never safe. It is fractured, violent, grotesque, yet Mauritius transforms this unhomeliness into a radical literary experiment. His work confronts despair, but also insists on the unlimited possibilities of imagination. Maybe I'll just, if the director allows me, just a brief quote directly from the text. This comes from page 92. There are flies squashed to the memory, congregations spinning our webs of prayers to catch the minute nuggets of revelation, ink stains, watercolors, chalk, pastel drawings, tear stains, blood stains, time charts, posters of the life cycle of fleas, and once more ink stains, dirty fingers stretching into obscure orifices, blurred images speaking deeper into the flea crevices of the mind. And what once was our parents now rotted and stank beneath the line of the 20th century. An iron net had been thrown over the skies quietly. Now it tightening bit sharply into the tenderer meat of our brains. The hard knocks it gave to our heads made us strange, even to ourselves. And beneath it all, our minds festered, gangrenous, gangsterish. The underwear of our souls was full of holes, and the scratch it hid was infested with lice. We were whores, eaten to the core by the syphilis of the white man's coming, masturbating onto a Playboy centerfold, screaming abuse at a solitary but defiant racist, bearing our ass to the yawning pit latrine, writing angry black poetry, screwing pussy as though out to prove that white men do not in reality exist. This was all contained within the circumvention of our gut rot. Thank you.
Is our home safe? Is our home safe? I'm asking. Thank you so much, Dr. Ngara. I'm going to read this one. I'm definitely going to read it. Yeah, it is hitting home, but I'm not going to say anything. I think it really flows nicely from what Prof Hussein was talking about. So we need to look at our home. And what I like is that the title says the house of hunger, but he speaks about home. This is what I always say. There's a difference between a house and a home. I'm leaving questions to you. Thank you very much. Without really wasting any more time, I'm going to ask Dr. Herkulaas Combrink to share his wife. I see he's also going to read the book. Thank you. Can we clap hands for him, please? Sorry, Dr. Combrink, I know that you have a program, it says break. We're not going to take a break. We're going to finish with the program so that we can actually have time to have a conversation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rosaline. And to the previous speakers, I think just before I start, ignorance is ignoring the uncomfortable. I think this for me is important. Work like this is important. We have to stretch our minds a little bit. For those of you who don't know, I work in technology. I build a lot of technology and I think about things from a very natural and physical science perspective. I'll give you an idea. While I was sitting here looking at the lights, I was thinking about the ones and zeros and the flow of the Wi-Fi to the router and exactly how much computational power it would take to transfer all of the SMSs and messages flying in this room. And I don't mean this as a joke. Those are literally the things I dream about. For some people, fiction is in characters that are fabricated. For me, fiction is technology that does not yet exist. And I try to imagine how to manifest that into the real world. At some point in my career, I was confronted with a very difficult question. What is a system? I build systems, apps and things on phones, and engineer them. And I train a lot of students and industry in this. And for a long time, I thought about what is a system? More importantly, how do you study such a system? And so the easiest way that I, in my career, in my life, thought about this was rooted in a lot of academic literature. A system you can imagine is like a motor vehicle. How do you study a system? You break something in it. You remove a wheel, you cut a wire, and you see whether the system still functions. That break, we call an artifact. And so when you have a system, it's very easy to study an artifact. So when something goes wrong, typically in a lab, or typically when I read stories, I don't read academic texts and text in my world that tell me what works. I typically read things that tell me, well, this is why it failed. And for me, that is quite powerful. That uncertainty and trying to scientifically make sense of the uncertainty. In my mind, there's a certain nuance and literary elegance to an equation balancing out. I know it might seem very superficial, but it's actually rather deep. If you think deeply about abstract thoughts like mathematics, it's far more philosophical than you can imagine. And so I spend most of my time reflecting deeply on the way of thinking. I spend more time thinking about thinking than doing it, because the better I think about a problem, the better I become at solving a problem. And the same is true for my teams, and the same is true for all the work that I engage in. I was then confronted with something very profound: complicated systems. As a sobering thought, a complicated system, like a system, let's take a motor vehicle, has very complicated parts to it. Think about a hybrid car. You've got a computer inside it, a lot of wiring, electricity, fuel, and all of these things need to work together. I was confronted with the same question. How do you study a complicated system? Well, in a very similar way. You break apart, you remove something, and you see what it does to the entire system. Again, using an artifact. And this simplistic but complicated way of thinking about things helped me for a certain point of my career. It helped me solve certain problems, and it helped me build certain technologies, until I was confronted with something very specific: complex systems. Complex systems are, by its very nature, unstudyable because they're complex. In fact, too complex to study by itself. Let me give you an example. So a system would be a normal car. A complicated system would be a hybrid car. A complex system would be the automotive industry. You tell me, if I cut a wire in a car in Kotwa, can we study the impact it will have on a traffic officer in Bloemfontein? No. Or if a car burns down in Cape Town, can we study what's going to happen in Parliament with the new traffic laws? No. Complex systems, much bigger and much more complex to study. Artificial intelligence is part of a complex system. It lives on our phones, it interacts with the cloud, it works with social constructs,
We have a lot of cultural nuance that goes into these technologies. It's no longer whether it works or not, it's whether the output it gives is culturally relevant. AI and the tools we build need to be culturally sensitive. So AI has become very complex very quickly and part of complex systems. And for years, I was confronted with this question: how do you study a complex system? I hope you understand the profound impact of this problem. It's not an easy problem to conceptually unpack. Imagine trying to do something in a system that you don't understand, and no one is out there to tell you how to think about this problem. That was what I was confronted with. I had the privilege of meeting and reading Gerald Mitchley's Systemic Intervention. Gerald Mitchley is a philosophy professor who's never really worked in artificial intelligence, or mathematics, or STEM science. He is both a continental and analytical philosopher, for those of you who know what that means. So he does care about logic. He also cares about some of the literary aspects of philosophy and unpacking what that means. But what Gerald Mitchley did, which was quite profound, is he started unpacking not necessarily what a complex system is, but how can we start thinking about studying a complex system? And more importantly, if we do something useful, can we measure the impact it has on the bigger system? This started a very profound journey, because this one book I've read several times, and every time I read it, I get a new perspective. I think that's something profound, before I unpack the nuance of the book, that all of you need to understand. Books are not just words. They need to transform the way we think. They need to transform the way we reason. Even if the perspective we get is someone else's perspective, to see what not to think and what not to do. So I think that's quite important for all of us. We need to stretch our minds a little. Think about your mind as an elastic band. It needs to push and pull a bit. So, Systemic Intervention by Gerald Mitchley starts off with a very complex problem. The complex system are homeless children on the streets of Manchester in the UK. These children enjoy their lives because they have a home that they go to, because there is a council system. So they're not quite homeless, but they are loafers. And because they're underage, they choose not to go to school. Enforcement's not really on the government side, and the government doesn't quite know what to do with these children. They end up drinking a lot and using drugs, and you can't cut them off economically, but they are in what we would call child-headed households. It's a very complicated problem, because we know that these children will grow up to ultimately manifest and become criminals. So we want to stop this problem, but they refuse education, they refuse help. So you can understand that this problem is not just social, it's societal, and it is in its very nature a complex system. So the book starts with the experimental design that Gerald Mitchley and the team did to try and intervene and try and figure out, firstly, what the problem is, and how do we systemically intervene in something that is so complex. As you can imagine by the example that was just presented, it is a social problem, and I think across the world we sit with these issues. How do you intervene with something that is so complex? The crux of Gerald Mitchley's story is to frame a series of complex systems or complicated systems in a way that you can't measure what the system in and of itself does, because at this point in time it's impossible. But what you can do is you can measure the strength of the relationship between systems. I'll say that again because it took me a very long time to formulate what Gerald Mitchley tried saying in his book into the sentence. It's more useful to study the strength of the relationship between systems than to try and understand what these systems do. So if you think about the automotive example, it's much more useful to think about cars, traffic officers, petrol stations, and laws, and the strength of the relationship between these four parts. That's something you can measure, and that's something you can understand. So take artificial intelligence as an example. Data, the devices we use, the computing we use, and the cultural context and bias. Those are things we can understand. Those are things we can measure. So rather than trying to unpack things in a very detailed and very sophisticated manner, it's easier to simplify very complicated things and trying to understand the relationships between them. The profound impact that this piece of work has had on my career and my life has been immeasurable, because it has given me a way to think about problems in both a complex and simplistic manner. It has elegantly formulated and phrased what I never knew I needed to think about. When I look at all the noise of the research I do, people I collaborate with, and people I train. Funny enough, as a natural scientist and as someone who comes from this very STEM-rooted education, complex systems open up an entire avenue of social science. Turns out, every single thing we develop and build is rooted in the human component, and we have to be sensitive to that. As my career has grown, I started interacting more with social scientists, more with philosophers, and people from the humanities scholars, because that uncomfortable nuance and context gives us rich meaning to what we develop. Now we're not just developing a tool that works, but we're doing something that is culturally relevant. We're doing something that is nuanced, and we're doing something that is rich in its data. So to close off, one of the most profound pieces of seminal work from Gerald Midgley's systemic intervention, apart from the fact that he was a thought leader in his field and is globally known as this thought leader of systemic intervention, he has given myself and a lot of other scholars, specifically in the STEM sciences, but also in humanities, a unique way of looking at a problem from a different perspective. And I don't think that would have been possible if I only read natural science. Thank you.
Now it makes sense why you are with the humanities. It really makes sense. Thank you so much for thinking about the humanity while you're dealing with the technology, because it may become difficult for us to understand what you're trying to teach us if you don't understand the humanity in us. A colleague asked that I repeat these books. Prof Hussein's book was Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. Dr. Ngara spoke about The House of Hunger by Dambudzo DZO Marichera. I pronounced it correctly. And then Dr. Combrink spoke by Gerald Midgley, is Systemic Interventions. Is it intervention or interventions? Interventions. Brilliant. Thank you so much for really bringing that part to us, that we don't have to understand the system. We can't measure the system, but the impact, the strength of the system, we can. So we need to look at that so that we can actually, and we don't have to be afraid of these things. Sometimes we are just afraid. When we have people who understand them, let's interact with them so that they can actually work for us, because they're meant to really make things, life better for us. And I think you had the golden thread. We're still talking about this home. Is it safe? When the person who talks about systemic interventions can talk about homeless children, it says to us we are all human beings. It does not matter what we are doing. So we are human. Thank you very much. And I'm going to our last panelist before others can run away. Prof Neo Lekgotla la Ramoupi. I'm not going to explain any further. Over to you, Prof. I was looking at him and I thought he might start singing, you know. He is like that.
I'm going to sing.
I know.
Yeah, I'm going to sing from the This is so important that now I have 2 books that I must read. I've learned so much from Prof Hussein. I've learned so much from Dr. Ngara. Yeah. Dr. Combrink, what you presented went over my head. So I want to come to your class, because, yeah, it's, and I'm glad that you are here. I have a presentation before I talk because the book that I'm going to talk about, it speaks about what I want to talk about, and I felt he says it better than I can say it. Then after that, I'll talk.
First of all, would you like a job as a PR agent? Hello, welcome everybody. This this presentation is really it's not a linear presentation. I'm going to tell a number of different narratives at the same time, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me. On the one hand, it's the story of how somebody becomes an activist. What is activism? On another level, it's a story of the search for an identity in a country where the politics of identity was supreme. What it was to be a white person, what it was to be a Zulu. These were all ideas and things which bubbled constantly in daily interaction in an apartheid environment. So, and then of course, it's also about the journey to create a new music, a music that tried to offer an alternative to what was going on in the country. So I'm going to start really. I mean, my early childhood has been dealt with already. So I'm going to start really the moment that I stepped over the threshold into a new world, and it's when I met a street musician, a chap by the name of Charlie Mzila, and I was sent up to a store to buy some bread and milk for my mom. I was living with my mom. I grew up in basically a single parent family, and I I had learned a bit of classical guitar, and I was very very fond of Celtic folk music, Scottish and Irish folk music. Having been born in England and not knowing my biological father until I was 21, music was the way in which I could connect to that part of my identity that I actually didn't have. So I had a kind of an English musical identity, which I subscribed to. I went up to the store and there was this chap playing a guitar, and I was quite a shy. I was very small for 15. And I stood there holding my bread and my milk, and I watched him play, and I saw immediately that the guitar was tuned differently and there was a different picking style. And I just had like an epiphany, and I thought, this is a completely unique guitar genre. It's like, like a South African blues. Um, and I'd really like to learn it. So shyly, I went up to him and I said, could you teach me? And he couldn't speak English that well. So it started off with gestures. You will teach me guitar. And he said, okay. But I said, where do you work? And he said, across the road. He was a flat cleaner opposite the store. I said, I'll come to see you after school. And I came after school and I started getting my lessons. And it was a tough period for me because I had to sneak up to the roof where the workers in South Africa, all of your domestic workers had quarters on the top of these apartment blocks. And I had to sneak past the caretaker all the time. And there were a few moments where the caretaker wanted to call the police because I was, you say, what are you doing with the young white boy in your room? And as a youngster, I started to feel awkward because this behavior was being criminalized. either as, any time a black or a white person were meeting, it had to be for some nefarious purpose. Nobody could actually see an interaction. It was always a cloud of suspicion. And from that moment on, I was subjected to this kind of atmosphere all the time as a young person. Things carried on, and from the guitar, I was exposed to Zulu war dancing, and I really wanted to become a dancer. Zulu war dancing is a style of dancing whereby young men in the migrant labor hostels on the outskirts of Johannesburg, which were owned by the municipality, tribesmen would come into the city and they'd get a room, or they'd share a room with 20 other men, beds. It's like a dormitory. It's very Spartan, very military, open plan toilets, open plan kitchens, open plan showers, male only, 3,000 men in these labor hostels, which fed the city its labor. And it was in here, in these hostels and just around them, that the most amazing dancing and cultural activity would unfold over the weekends. Dance team.
Ladies and gentlemen, the book is titled Johnny Clegg. Everybody must read this book to understand South Africa from a white, Jewish, South African Zulu man, because I studied at the University of Natal in Durban. I was there for 9 years. I can't speak proper isiZulu as Johnny Clegg can, who's Umlungu. I always give this silly example that when I got to Durban, 1989, I don't know if I loved her, but I liked this Zulu lady. And then I tried to propose to her. And, I speak Setswana. I'm from Harangua, there in Pretoria. And then she said to me, Buti, awukwazi ukukhuluma isiZulu sizopha kanjani? Which was fair, This book is so important because Johnny Clegg speaks about identity. He speaks about culture, African culture, but specifically Zulu culture. I don't know if, I think it's President Jacob Zuma has awarded Johnny Clegg. Johnny Clegg is an academic. He taught at Wits anthropology, and then he felt this music, this Tatamia was more of his calling. He left the university and he went to KwaZulu to learn isiZulu and to learn the dance. President Cyril Ramaphosa gave him one of those awards. I wish we can, as a University of the Free State, to look at honoring Sipho Mchunu, who taught Johnny Clegg how to play the guitar, traditional guitar, and who made Johnny Clegg this famous, right? This is not a political statement, it's just how Johnny Clegg speaks about this book. When I read it, I'm teaching history through music. So I teach the color through music. So Johnny Clegg is in my classroom. What I wanted to say is that if we can bring the songs and the music into the curriculum across the disciplines, we'll understand more of our history. Johnny Clegg has got a very famous song here called asiyambonanga uMandela uphelele kuphi. This song was banned. The apartheid government banned it because John Clegg did not sing in exile. He was in Johannesburg, and he was just saying that we don't know where Nelson Mandela ended. Nelson Mandela was on Robben Island. Robben Island is my scholarship. I work on Robben Island. I did my PhD on Robben Island. My book, which we publish here, is on Robben Island. The apartheid government decided not to imprison him, but they banned the song. It's a powerful song because John Clegg basically what he was saying is, we don't know if Nelson Mandela is still alive on Robben Island or they've killed him, right? Why I chose this book? I chose this book because it impacted on me when I was writing my book. And then I just want to coach him. I just wanted to make sure that he is in my book. So chapter 3 of my book, which is titled Cultures Collide. I'm quoting John Clegg. This is in page 113 in the book. I'm quoting him. I heard the music and I saw the people. When I stumbled in the world of tribal migrant Zulu, there were people who seemed to be completely grounded in their sense of who they were. I was envious of their deep comfort in their language and customs, and the fact that they were totally real in their identity. Please mark that identity. A pivotal moment for me, and my deepest initial revolutionary insight was when I saw them. I just want to pause there. I will continue with the quote. You know, in most cases, people don't see us. You know, I started my academic career at the University of Botswana, but because of Ramoupi, he thought he owned everybody there. The protest, then I left, I went to the University of Natal, which in 1989 was still a white university, English university. And I did all my degrees there. And when I finished, I worked on Robben Island, which is another university. And I got Ford Foundation scholarship. And I chose, I had dollars. Ford Foundation said I can go anywhere in the world. I chose to go to Black University, Howard University in Washington, D.C. I spent 3 years in Washington, D.C. I could walk to the White House. Howard University professors saw me. I had long dreadlocks. They saw me. But when I compare with where I was at the University of Natal, I spent almost 8 years. There are lots of instances that I feel that they did not see me. So this quotation is powerful because John Clegg is saying that he heard the music and he saw the people. These people, they are not educated, you know, they are cleaning the hotels, you know. Let me continue with this quote. I quote, to me, they were not invisible, anonymous migrants walking down the street playing that music. I heard the music and I saw the people. They filled my sky and my imagination each and every day. They had histories and individual place names.
So powerful.
I wanted one. The Zulu migrant community was not simply the oppressed other. They were warriors in the city, musicians, dancers, sorcerers, healers, diviners who could navigate the past and the future. They were husbands, they were fathers, they were sons. John Clegg, end of quote, in Scatterings of Africa, page 113. That's all I really wanted to focus on, the quotation that all of us in our departments, when we go into the lecture hall, when we teach, we must be able to when I teach about the history of apartheid, I must be able to see my colored student in the class. I must be able to at Wits. I taught at Wits for 5 years. I had Indian students. I had more white students there. Because of my experience at Howard, my experience at the University of Natal, I'm conscious about seeing who's in my class. And I ask them, we talk about the history of apartheid. What is your experience of that? And the minute you include your student in your classes, the student become your professors too, because you learn a lot from them. Two example I want to use from that time at Wits. It doesn't happen here. I hope it will happen. I'm just finished 3 years at University of the Free State on the 1st of September. So I'm excited about that. At Wits, in 2018, I started to teach. I was teaching history of education, B.Ed. So the students that I was teaching in 2018 are the students who started in 2015. So these are the FISMAS for students. And then 2018, if you remember, it was Nelson Mandela's centenary. So I got into the class excited and I said, we're going to look at the centenary of Nelson Mandela. Yo, a lot of students, especially female students at the back of my class, stood up and say, please, we don't want to hear anything about Nelson Mandela. Can you teach us about women in the struggle, South African women? So I was teaching history of education for the whole year. It was block 1. I told them in block 2, I'm going to create this course, and then in block 3, I taught it. When I was teaching them about history of women in the struggle across the races, you know, I put the women who were at the 1956 Women's March at the Union Building. One of the ladies there is the only one who's still alive, Ma'am Dubrain. She's colored. As soon as I put her picture there, one female student, a colored student at the back, stood up and screamed, that's my granny, that's my granny, that's my granny, you know? So the history becomes alive. In another class, a white student, an Afrikaner student, as I was teaching about Umkhonto weSizwe and the South African Defence Force, he went home and talked to his father and came back to me and said his father was telling him his father fought for the South African Defence Force in the border wars, you know, Angola, Zimbabwe, Southern Rhodesia. So, and I was saying in the class, here in Bloemfontein, maybe there are kids who Ace Mahashula is their relative, as Nyanda is their relative. Bring that history into the classroom. I'm not the only one who's got knowledge. We all have knowledge. Okay, so going back to this book, Johnny Clegg is white, he's English, and he's Jewish. But he was able to leave the Ivory Tower. Wits University is a very famous university. People ask me why I left University of the Wits. We told us then came to Bloemfontein, University of the Free State. I think I'm going to write a book about that. My first week in Bloemfontein, I didn't experience traffic. And I was like, what's going on here? And I drove back to Joburg on Friday. When my car drove into Joburg, my hair at the back stood up because I hadn't experienced traffic for the whole week. So if I had a young family, I would move them to Bloemfontein, but you know, they are old. They don't want to leave Joburg. So every institution has got its own advantages. Every institution has got its own disadvantages. At Wits, if you come late, you don't have parking. If you park your car outside, one of my colleagues, Dr. Paul Gozrek, he came late and he parked his van outside. And when we finished, he went outside. He was even checking under other cars because they took it. You know, so ladies and gentlemen, this book is very important. Johnny Clegg doesn't quote anyone here. You know, as academics, we tell our students, you didn't reference, you didn't wipe the footnote. Johnny Clegg talks about his own experience of, he was born in England and then his mother moved with him to Zimbabwe. He spent Zambia, I think. He was 5 years. He started schooling there. He went to school with, black children, and he came to Johannesburg. So he was exposed when he came back, when he came to South Africa, and his courage to go into the hostels and learn isiZulu and the dance, for me, it continues to have a profound impact in what I'm trying to do in my classroom. That it's just a color, Bob Marley talks about there's no superior and inferior complexes. There's no such. People have made those things. And when you read Johnny Clegg, you understand this is the last point. He took a bus from Johannesburg to go to the township in the rural area in KwaZulu-Natal, where Sipho comes from. And then this bus was taking, migrant workers back to KwaZulu who work in Johannesburg. And the driver told him, a black driver told him, Umlongo, you cannot get into this bus because this bus is for the natives. And John Clegg says, no, I want to go into this bus. And the driver said he must sit on on the bus, there's the engine. You sit in that engine and it's hot. He was sitting there until they got to KwaZulu-Natal, right? And he was in a community where he could only speak isiZulu, and he learned that. When he played West Juluka, they'll go into township, they'll go into Soweto. He will have to go through different doors so that the apartheid police do not see him. So Johnny Clegg has managed to see the loopholes in the apartheid legislation, and he was able to expose them. He says that he is not an activist, he's not a politician, he's a musician. Miriam Makeba said the same thing, Bob Marley said the same thing. I use two Zimbabwean artists, Mtukuru and the Rasta guy, Mafuno, in my book. They say the same thing, but the music is so powerful that if we listen to the music, we can understand and we can really, I think, empathize with our situations. Thank you.
Prof, thank you so much. What I really like is that where you say, in most cases, people don't see us. I resonated with that. We need to see people, not just hear them. Very important. And here's this Johnny Clegg. I loved his music. Who says, I heard the music, but I also saw the people. They filled the sky. So I think when you said students come with the knowledge, that is very critical. Students are not empty vessels that are just coming for us to fill with knowledge. They come with their knowledge, so we need to co-create with them so that when they leave, they are living. They came with the knowledge, they live as better people. So that's why we. But when you said you were going to sing, I thought you would, and then you spoke about Miriam Makeba. I thought you would remind us how that happened, but it's fine. When I was at boarding school, most of you were not yet born. In 1982 until age 4, I acted in a play which we were trying to imitate Gibson Kent's plays, but the guy who wrote was Paul Rapeto. And I used to love the song of Miriam Makeba that says, bahleli bonke etilogeni, bahleli bonke kwanongqongqo, bahleli bonke etilogeni, bahleli bonke kwanongqongqo. Helelelele, That's how Miriam Makeba used to sing. I don't know if you know these songs. Yeah, nanku Mandela, nanku etilongweni. That was my way of saying we're going to have a 5 minutes break. And then when we come back, our colleagues will still be here so that we can ask them questions. Thank you. Can we go for a break? Because I'm saying 5 minutes, we must be back quickly. Maybe until 1:45 so that we can actually be quicker. This is where I needed Dr. Combrink. I was speaking and on the screen it was muted, and I'm speaking to our colleagues online. Are you still there, colleagues? Apologies that I have not been looking at you. Just thumbs up. I hope you're back from your tea break. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I see. Colleagues, can we come back? Yeah, we finished on a high note where Prof Neo was like in his classroom. He really enjoyed, and just reminding you where we started, and maybe to let you know that Prof Hussein indicated that he was available at is available if anyone would like to ask questions about what he spoke about or any inspiration at President Stein building. I think it's Annex 217. So when you go to President Stein, I think it's either second or third floor. I mean, first or second floor, but you will not struggle. So I say in April, all right, now I'm going to give over to you. You've been listening, you were inspired, but we need to have a chat, and I'll also check on colleagues online. Any question or any comment to what our colleagues spoke about? I wanted to give you just a brief that Prof Hussein spoke about John Perkins, who wrote a book on Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And he challenged us. He spoke openly. And before we came, he said, I know people are going to hate me. I said, no, this is the world, free world. Anybody can say what they want. So he told you that he doesn't vote, but he teaches politics. So you heard, and no weak leader is needed in this life. We really need strong leaders. And Dr. Ngara spoke about Dambudzo Mareshera, the House of Hunger, and talking again about violence being everywhere, the beatings, whether it's the husband and the wife, the children, or the police. So there is violence everywhere. So what are we saying about these things? These are the things we read in the books. And what I like from Dr. Combrink is that while I started by saying we are the product of words, he said something very profound, that books are not just full of words, but those words are really challenging us. They can build us, they can, they can inspire you. So it's important to not just take them as words, but also having spoken from the book, The Systemic Interventions by Gerald Midgley, it's that the system, do not just want to test or to measure the system, but measure the strength of the system, the impact that it can have on the people, and also considering the people while we're building the systems so that they can actually be friendly. And then as we closed, Prof Ramoupi was speaking about Johnny Clegg, who lives in his classroom, who teaches with him from his book, Scatterings of Africa. Anyone knows the song? Oh, at least that one you know. Not the one I was singing. Ah, you are disappointing me. So don't just see the people. I mean, don't just hear the music, the people, but see the people as well. Now, as teachers, it's important. Can we now listen? I'm still just trying to help you so that you can start asking questions and having conversations. We must remember that we must make our lessons alive, bring them to life, because when somebody hears that, oh, this person was actually there during that time, then it becomes easier to relate and to remember the lessons. So I'm going to give you this time, colleagues, to ask questions or make comments. There is a mic. Just raise your hand, and then Dr. Monde is already, his hand is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Program Director. I think you mentioned the word golden thread, which is what I noticed as I was listening to the wonderful speakers. It's a pity that Prof Hussein is not here. I wanted also to assure him that I'm not a caring member of the organization. I've voted maybe for about 6 different political parties because of my teaching background. When I'm marking a student, I used to mark not based on the previous performance, but on the current performance. That's what made me not to be a card-carrying member. I vote for what, looking at your performance, not at what you used to do, or that's how I look at it. So I wanted to, it's a pity she's not here, but I wanted to also share that. But listening to all the speakers, which maybe it's a comment the speakers will comment later. Yesterday I'm sure you heard President Ramaphosa called all the 4,500 ANC councillors to FNB to what is called a roll call. The next year we are having elections, local government elections. I was wondering, we voted in 2021, why call them now? And now you're saying if you don't perform, we are going to show you the door. After so many years, it's like when you're sleeping. So to me, it's like there's something wrong with the system. I'm quoting from Dr. Combrink. I don't know whether it's complex or what, when it comes to the local government. For him to go as far as saying, but when you look at the DA municipalities, they are performing very well, meaning that he is aware there is a system that is working, but they've been ignoring it for some time. They only see it now. So that complex, that's the systems thinking, we are aware, but we sometimes put it aside, and when it suits us, we bring it back. Now, yesterday, this roll call was about, let us bring it back. And then again, listening to what a prof was talking about Juluka, it reminded me of Chris Papas, who is the mayor of Umngeni municipality. They are also performing very well in Umngeni. But Chris Papas, what sets him aside, to one of the best, he speaks the language of the people at Umngeni. I'm not sure if you've heard Chris Papas. He's a white young mayor, because he knows the people that are in Umngeni. He speaks their language. He understands their daily lives. That makes him to be popular. And that is the reason why some people were even thinking maybe he should have been maybe elected as the KZN premier because of his understanding of what is happening. And lastly, when you're talking about Dr. Ngara, homely environment, the environment is not okay. You look at people on a daily basis complaining about water, for example. In Joburg, the previous days, they were talking about water. Eastern Cape, Western Cape, we're talking about the drug lords. These things have been there for years. It's only now we took only the courage from Mukwanazi to stand up and say, no, enough is enough. This home, if I don't stand up in the next few years, this home, South Africa, will go down to the dogs. And some people are asking him, are saying, now this Mukwanazi wants to take the center stage. And yet in March, he was with them in Parliament, addressing the very same thing that he addressed in April. It's like he's saying it for the first time. And yet when you look at the recordings in Parliament, he spoke about this in March. He was just repeating it. So it shows that I'm taking what they are sharing to our day-to-day experiences, that what we are saying, that book that Dr. Ngara is talking about is around 1980. It's like history repeating itself. Because what he's talking about is things that we experience on a daily basis. Talking about people not being happy about what is happening in the country. People talking about, let's have conversations. Why do we have to pay 900 million for conversations when we know the problems? We know our problems. Why do we have to spend a lot of money? So I'm trying to, whatever that I was hearing the panel talking about is something that we know, it's something that we can relate, and something that we need as South Africans. It is in our hands to change the situation. But as to how we're going to do it, it's all about us changing our mindset and say, do we allow things to move as it is happening now? Or do we use what the Nepal youth are doing? The youth from Nepal, they've just decided that enough is enough. They decided to change the government and they've elected their own. They use the poll, it's the youth. So I'm trying to say thank you for sharing those ideas from your books, but those books are talking to us in terms of what is it that we can do moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Combrink. It's fire to respond. Over to you, Doctor.
That was quite a mouthful, and it was quite important because you said three things that deeply resonated. I'm going to disclaim and disclose my political view on a lot of things very upfront so that all of you know. I think I'm not qualified enough to take the stance of a particular political party. But what I do know for a fact is that changing the way I think to be more human focused has been more important in the work I do. I do believe that those who don't read or write don't know how to think properly about very complicated things. I was there. I used to not write and I used to not read when I was younger. And it was until I started writing and reading that I realized the bias in my own viewpoint. And that's a bias that we all need to challenge. And so I don't think we'll ever be comfortable with putting lipstick on a pig and saying, this is now a beautiful thing. But what I do think we'll be comfortable with is getting a set of shared values. And that can be studied from a complex systems perspective very easily. But it does require us to have very difficult conversations, like this one.
Yeah.
This is a very difficult conversation, especially because my demographic is a bit different. So it's going to hit me. But it's important.
Thank you. Thank you. I was taking notes here. The roll call, Ramaphosa. Sometimes when I hear these things, I want to stop my car and take off my pants if Ramaphosa is there, because it doesn't make sense, right? But I want to say something here that I want to convince you, Dr. Monde and Prof Hussein, to vote in 2030 and 2034 because I want to run. I want to run as president of South Africa. Not necessarily to be the president, but I want to assemble a dream team across the racial divide who want to change this country. Because, look, we have everything here. I'm from Garankuwa. When it was Mputaswana, I could drive at night. I studied at Univo. I could drive to Univo to Mahikeng at night. If I can drive to Mahikeng at night, I will die. Potholes and everything. What has happened in 31 years, right? So I think Dr. Combrink will talk about having shared values. We need to move away from the race positions and talk about the values. If you look at your salary, the tax they take so much tax from my wife's salary, they take so much from my salary, a lot of money. We live in mid-rent, we're paying almost between 8,000 to 10,000 electricity, even when we didn't get it during the load shedding. So I had, this is the last point, I had Miss Mukonyana say she wants to run for president in 27. I'm like, over our head, over our dead body. It's not gonna happen. And when we teach, we need to make our students aware that this is their country. I'm 58 years old. I don't think I'm going to live for more than 50 years. I don't want to be 100 years living, you know. They must know, as they've done with June 76, the Peace March 4, if they can decide one day they march to Union Building or to the Parliament and say, Concerts Hartford, enough is enough. All these things will stop. It just calls all of us across the races to decide what this country should be. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for the comments, Dr. Moore. I'm going to be very brief. In my talk, I highlighted the sentence, I got my things and left. Speaking from kind of an outsider, inside perspective as a Zimbabwean residing and working in South Africa, and knowing the history of my own home, which I also decided to pack my things and left. My encouragement to our mainly young audience here is that if you don't act, you will find yourself in the same position or having to make the same decision that I took in 2005 to pack your things and leave. What that does then is that you lose the best talent of the nation because the best people are the people who are able to migrate to other places and make lives there. And so what remains is what is called a catistocracy, where the rule of or the government of a nation is by its worst elements. So young people, as Prof Neo just said, the ball really is in your hands, it's in your court. Decide the kind of futures that you want to build for yourselves.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I saw a hand. Okay, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda and I am part of the library's club. Firstly, I just wanted to add a comment on what Dr. Mondi said about the roll call. I think it does actually raise an eyebrow because if you remember, there was supposed to be a national dialogue that was cancelled people rebutted that because exactly like why now? And also it's a thing of we keep on discussing the same things. It's not like we don't know what is wrong with South Africa, the problems that South Africans are facing, but we keep on having the same conversations without any practical solutions. And moreover, I just wanted to say also that if you look at the people that were going to be part of that conversation, it's not to say not real South Africans, but like they don't understand the problems that South Africans go through. You call actors, celebrities to come discuss problems that are being faced by South Africans. That doesn't, it's not realistic. So yeah, it really does raise an eyebrow to say like why now? Because they know that okay, like there are elections. And him finally being comfortable to admit that there are actually other municipalities that are owned by other political parties that are doing good. It's like why now? Why did like all this time you didn't know or you couldn't see and try to implement these things in your guys' municipalities? So yeah, I wanted to pause that first. And then secondly, it's a pity that Prof Hussein is not here, but I was just thinking as he was talking about how like the sex and power thing like comes into play. So I am currently listening or like I'm following a series rather by an American political commentator, Candace Owens. I don't know if that's it, heard of her, but she follows the story of Brigitte. So the name of the series is Becoming Brigitte, and how she might. So Brigitte is the first lady of France, and she's married to Emmanuel Macron. So she talks about how there's a possibility that she might not be a woman and she's actually a man. So she does like a whole follow up in how like their relationship started. And when they met, Brigitte was 38, 39, turning 40, and Emmanuel was 14 years old. And it just like the series unpacks the whole like the link between power and sex and mostly pedophilia. Because if you look at these, like most of these people, like there's always a link between them and like young boys, just like sex, not just sex with anyone, but like with young children. And also she links it to theology and how everything is like theological, whether we like to believe it or not. And I believe I think it was the speaker he also said something about he mentioned Greek mythology. Candice also unpacks that and how these people are religious, whether we like it or not, and they like to present this idea that no, not everything is theological, but everything is theological and everything is that deep. And it is up to us as people to not just take what is given to us, but to sit down and analyze to say, okay, what is actually going on here? Yeah, thank you so much.
Is there another hand? I just want to make sure that because we are supposed to, I'm going to give 2 last hands and then comments.
Okay, thanks everyone. My name is Defo. I'm working here at the Social Library. Actually, my question was based to Dr. Hussein, but unfortunately he stepped outside. So he already mentioned something like he doesn't really like to vote. So I just felt it very wrong. I didn't understand why initially, but unfortunately he's not here. But what I can say or what I can add there is that we as South African, we all know how things they run here in South Africa, and it's very painful when you see someone who's qualified like a prof or a doctor who doesn't want to bring a system that can use in order to make sure that everyone who stays in South Africa, at least we do all get any chances that we want. Even if we can check, I don't know, we had several systems that we use here initially, which was the kings. We all know that we were controlled by kings and queens initially. Then after they started to introduce the system that was called feudalism, then it didn't work very well because of capitalism was also there along the way in order to do what, to capitalize the system that we are using. But along the way, it's within us as people who are staying in South Africa to make sure that whatever we do, it is aligned with our constitution, even though that we know that the constitution that we're using, at some point, we didn't benefit from it because it was drafted by Dutch as well as our president, Cyril Ramaphosa. And what I can say or what I can add is that it's very painful to see someone from other country who can come and give us some invention in our country. that is not gonna happen because of we also had the sunset clause, which was something that we never continue about it during that era of apartheid, where the system that was oppressing us as Black people. But along the way, what I can add is that it's much better if all those professors, people who know that have obtained qualifications, they can just gather up. Then after we have the GDP, where we all know that they're gonna take different people who did biology, physics, mathematics, accounting, then they can put them on the same room and to make sure that at least we empower our country because of we all know that our economy is in the hands of white people, even though we know it's very painful. But at some point, we need to face those factors in order to make sure that at least all of us we are all on the same page. And even though that we know that there's a document that was drafted during that era, which was Freedom Charter, but if we can check that even the ANC, they had the 2 majority, but they didn't do anything about it. But after the coalition, that's where they wanted to uplift their success, whereas we can see that it's very late. By the way, I just want to thank everyone. But unfortunately, Prof is not here. I wish he was also here so that at least he can engage all of us so that we can be on the same page. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. And as I said before, Carmen can say something. I like what you are saying. You are being brave because everyone has a viewpoint, and it might not be favorable to all of us, but that's his point of view. So you are also having a responsibility in this system to educate the way we have just done, and maybe amongst the young people who may need to not think the way you don't want them to think. That might actually lead them the way the right path. But remember, the right path depends on who says it is right. So yeah. Come in.
Okay, mine is just a general comment. Being the bookworm that I am, and then focusing on Dr. Neo's book of Johnny Clegg, we all need to remember our lives are a story. It's like he says he wish he could get more students to come and tell life stories. Your life's a story. The person next to you, their life is a story. Learn from each other's stories. Read books, learn from other stories. It's important to open your mind, take in knowledge, because a person who reads is a well-informed person and make well-informed decisions. So I think it's very important to read things like biographies and reading the difficult books. And at the start of Dr. Combrink's talk, my brain sort of shut down, but he unpacked it so nicely eventually. He linked it so nicely.
Yeah.
So remember, your life's a story. It could be a good story, it could be a bad story, but learn from each other's stories. Read and open your minds to the possibilities. Thanks.
Thank you very much. How many? 1, 2. Can they be brief? Yeah, please.
I told Dr. Sebolao I wanted to sing. Asimbonanga, Mandela tina, laphe hleli khona. Thank you, Dr. Professor Ramoupi. Thank you for educating me who is singing that song. I'm so shocked at Johnny Clegg. I literally could have never thought it. Or thought it, as we like to say, as the Gen Zs. Kibitso, guys. If you know what Bitso is, Kibitso.
Okay.
So I will not introduce myself or introduce it. He has already introduced. I generally do not have any questions when I'm at this type of events, but because my brain takes time to process information, it's very neurodivergent, so it takes time. Maybe I will have questions after I've read the books or I've sat down with my quiet thoughts. My brain was busy doing its own things, but I was listening. I just wanted to, guys, I suffer from not wanting to speak, but then there's a certain message I received last year from my guides, and they were like, you need to stop keeping quiet. You need to talk. You need to talk no matter how much you don't want to talk, but talk. So all I just wanted to do was to comment on Professor Hussein. I think it's very easier for us as the youth. Now I'm a very gullible person. Whatever I hear, I tend to believe it. I tend to go for it. But now through reading, I've started to question things a lot, and I think that's what was that is what each and one of the speakers here echoed or read, so you can critical thinking, you can apply it. I just wanted to say, really, guys, as the youth, let's vote. It's very easy to hear from an elder who do not vote, or even need to hear from a fellow young person who do not vote. But please vote. Voter apathy, it's a thing in South Africa. I don't even want to lie to you guys. It's either you vote or take it to the streets. Do you want to go to the union buildings or do you want to stand in line? I need you to make your choice. And this is coming from me as a person who also worked for the IEC last year during national government elections. Guys, I believe in our constitutional democracy. I literally witnessed the entire process from helping people vote, spending the entire morning from like 12 a.m. until 5 a.m. counting votes. Because after everyone had voted, I was like, okay, it's time to go. Maybe they will count by themselves at some center. No, we open the boxes, we count with independent observers party agents. So in that really affirmed my belief in our constitutional democracy. I counted the votes, and the independent people were there, everybody was there. It did not have to be somebody who counted the votes that I facilitated, the process I facilitated. So make a choice. Go to the union buildings, consider Ramaphosa is there, all the other ministers, or you just wait in line. But with the thought that constitutional democracy is there, it's alike. Thank you so much, panelists. I promise I will have questions sometime in future. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Kudzayi Nelson.
I have a question for you, Mr. Prof. I was a student, by the way. So, according to me, China is a very progressive and a very powerful country. And what I know is, or rather, what I think is it what I know is it's a communist party, communist country. So my question is, do you think we should rather opt for communism in South Africa? Like my question is, do you think South Africa should be a communist country? Thank you. Which class was it? Which class was it? Oh, second year, third year, last semester. Okay. That was a very interesting class. Students came from my first lecture to the last. Student came, I had 430 students, but at least 150, 200, sometimes more. So we're doing something together there. Look, I'm not a politician, right? I'm a teacher, I'm a history teacher, and what we do in history, we teach content. I've said in my class that we teach content and the student must make a decision on that. I made that crazy example that if you believe apartheid was good, support it. As long as you can support it, you'll pass my assignment. But if I tell you apartheid was bad, I must support it. And I'll give you marks. Because in history, it's important to have different perspectives, right? The ANC, when they came to power, 1994, they were scared to either be socialist like Cuba or Tanzania, Mwalimu Nyerere. The advantage of being a socialist with Tanzania, if you land in Tanzania International Airport, everybody who's there speaks Kiswahili. I was doing research there for 3 weeks. I had to buy a Kiswahili book so that I can understand the language. It's powerful. You are in a foreign country, but you don't use a European language. In South Africa, we failed to make a decision for 1994 to be anything other than what the National Party was. We felt this man. We should have taken a position. If we fail because we made a decision. We haven't done that, and that's why we must vote for something different. I don't care what color it is, but we must vote for something that different. If we are here in a community where you come from, if I'm growing spinach, you grow mealies, somebody is growing something different, we share it, right? That's the system that I will want to introduce in South Africa if I become the president. We used to share. Why is it that your neighbor is hungry? But you have so much, you also throw food in the dustbin. So the ideologies are not as important as the human, who want to care about each other. If a student in your class, you can see that she's having ladies when the man is there doesn't see, take off your jacket and give it to her, right, to cover herself, right? So that's the system that I will use. I respect China for what it is. I respect Cuba for what they've done. But in South Africa, from 1994, we failed to move from one position and implement something. Look at all the RDP houses, they're falling down, right? People are dying in KZN, those mudslides, people are still buried. Where did that money go to? And then Cyril Ramaphosa goes to FNB and he becomes emotional. Universities must bring our leaders to come to campus so then we can talk to them. So you can ask them about communism plus their politicians. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we give them a round of applause, please? I want to believe that we came to the end of this session. And when I look back, as a teacher would look at the objectives at the end of the session to say, are we achieving? I think we are on the right track. The interaction tells me that we need this more, Dr. Monde and Bome Jeanette and the colleagues, so that we can really get a platform where we can interact like this for the purpose of benefiting whoever is in the home. Because everybody spoke about this home that is not healthy, the home that is not safe. And that reminded me again of Memory Mageba when she's saying, Mama, I've got to come back to my homeland and make it a heaven on earth for me because I've been all over trying to find a place to stay, trying to find a friend for real. But everywhere I've been, I find people so busy that they hardly have got time to be looking my way. So if we as South Africans or as Africans cannot make this home to be safe, nobody else will do that. So my understanding of these books were saying, let's challenge ourselves. You might not be a politician. I'm not a politician, but I must make a difference where I am. Whatever I do, I must make sure that I contribute to making the home safe. Every person, whether you are young or old, let us make this home safe. This very University of the Free State is not a safe home. It's not a healthy home. My observation tells me that, and I'm sure you also know. But some of the things we make ourselves as if we can't see. There are children crying. Who is listening? We must listen. Everyone who is older than that child who's crying or who's even younger, you have a responsibility to make sure that we contribute to helping this child who's crying. I'm talking about students, even colleagues amongst ourselves. There are younger colleagues that are crying. They need us to make sure that this environment becomes the purpose of the words in the book is to inspire people. So when we read these books, let it not just be a way where we say, he spoke so well, she spoke so well. The important thing is, what are we doing with the words when we leave out here? Those are my parting shots. And I want to thank the colleagues. I think there's going to be Mayor Jeanette who's going to, is it Senator Jeanette who's doing the vote of thanks? Okay, lovely. There's an invitation here. My brother said, is saying those who want to join a big club. You heard Amanda, you're in the book club. Colleagues, we started a book club with the librarians at Sopan at a school, primary school, a combined school with the primary school learners. So if we can't do these things, if we know these things, let's also transfer them outside because those learners need that. Tomorrow they will be the University of the Free State students and will be complaining that, hey, they can't read, but we did not do anything. So if you want to join the book club, please come and join my brother in front of Amanda so that you can register so that we can participate. I think I'm going to give over to the director of the library, Mejinet, who is online to do the vote of thanks. And thank you so much, Mejinet.
Thank you very much, Doctor, my dear friend. And thank you very much, colleagues, and good afternoon. This was an amazing experience. And I want to thank my land manager, Professor Basuredi, for coming up with this project of mind altering books. And I see that this is really making an impact. It is invoking discussions, it is invoking, deep thinking. And quoting what he said, he said this project was for us to, to deepen society when we read books and about provoking action. And then he also quoted Virginia Woolf, where he said books are area reflections of. And another thing, colleagues, before I go to the speakers, I offer a vote of thanks. I also want to thank our program director, Dr. Sebolao. Like I said sometime earlier, that you need to have an office in the library. You are really part of the. Thank you so much there and raise your hand when the library makes a request that you come and take part. And I want to thank our partners from the National University of Lesotho who joined us online today and under Dr. Buhlemba Mbotata, the library, the university librarian. And I saw our colleagues from Liasa colleagues online. Thank you so much for joining this talk. And then our online colleagues, thank you so very much also for joining. And I also want to thank the Mind Altering Book team, Mr. Lashan Naika, Dr. Mwande Madiba, Mr. Gahisho Harekwe, Ms. Masi Chabalitzosa, Ms. Constance Dumela, Ms. Zuki Ketiwe, Ms. Geli Mukoka, Ms. Mapaseka, and Ms. Tudo Hosiema. And then also to thank our students. But then I'm going to the speakers, people who really raised what we have really given us enough food for thought. And where I was thinking maybe Dr. Mwandema Diba is already busy with requesting that books are ordered so that they are on the shelf, so that what our students have heard today are able to go through and also enrich their minds so that they become the best leaders that we are in the process of preparing for a greater future. Prof Hussein Solomon, in his absence, Confessions of Economic Hitmen, that was so profound, and looking at what is happening in Africa, the looting of the mineral resources, where Africa is just drained and we are left as a poor continent. Now we have to move around, searching for better life, whereas the resources of Africa are being enjoyed by the Europeans, by the North. So that was profound, looking at what the title of his book is about. And also, and I like the fact that, this is a safe space where we can discuss things openly. And I was, taken by, I don't know to say excitement or what, where he was just putting facts bluntly, that it was more about women and money and about sex. Those things normally we don't discuss them. We consider them to be taboo, but they are realistic things of life. And then Professor Kudzayi Ngara, this book, I think it just brought back the wounds of what is it to live in an African country and also South Africa. I mean, this what Dambuza Machera is sharing is similar to what we are experiencing here in the country, and it's still continuing. The cycle, of hunger, of violence, of rape. We are still experiencing those life difficulties. Dr. Combrink, in his absence, the complicated systems, he was engaging us to look beyond, to think about thinking. For me, it was just a profound, and his book by Gerald Magni, Systemic Intervention. Those are copies that we are really going to acquire in the library. And my professor know my you and I from the same area, and every time I see you, I feel home. When I see, it says I'm home when I see you. And thank you again about also sharing with us the book by the autobiography of Johnny Clegg, Scatterlings of Africa. I mean, it's a beautiful song. I mean, we are still dancing to the tune today, and it shows that some of the white people have always wanted to be part of the Black community, but now the apartheid systems made it difficult for them to, to feel that to be part of that space. But now they were yearning and made it a means. And Johnny Clegg, I think he was a typical example of making sure that he becomes part of what gives him a gratification and looking into the bigger picture. So I want to congratulate our authors. I mean our panelists for sharing these powerful books. And I have seen the students in the audience, and I trust that they are going to go through the books. And I want to say, because now looking at the discussion and the time that we took and the level of interest that it has invoked, I think maybe I must speak to Professor. At least we have it twice a year. Last year we were starting. This year we are seeing a level of interest, growing. So I think to provide the university with a space to engage, maybe if we have this event twice a year. And Keho, I also want to thank you for making sure that this event becomes a success through your leadership. So from my desk where I'm sitting, colleagues, thank you so very much, and really, I must say, enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Metinette, for those lovely words, and thank you for your leadership, because it takes leadership for such things to take place. And thank you that you are able to also work with everybody in the university to make sure that our goals as a university are being achieved. Well done. Thank you. All right, I'm going to request the panelists to remain for a few minutes. And thank you very much for everyone who came. Have a lovely afternoon. Some of us still have to go to a conference. Thank you. Oh, yes, and thank you to the members online. Thank you very much. And our colleagues from Lesotho. We'll be seeing you soon.